Welcome, everyone. My name is Steve Stein, and I'm the host of the Street Smart Wisdom podcast. And this is a live session of the Street Smart Wisdom podcast with two venerable guests. The title of today's presentation is 40 Years of Yoga, a look back and a look towards the future. Now, we did the math since then, and it's actually more like 90 years of yoga, but we're really honored to have on today's episode Gary Kraftsow and Aadil Pakhilvala. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah, so we were talking about beforehand. So one question I have is, how old were you when you got into yoga? Or when you started teaching? I think Aadil said you were teaching when you were 15 years old.
Right. I started when I started watching my mother and father being taught by BKS Iyengar when I was 3, but he wouldn't let me join class till I was 7. So I started when I was 7, and then my school asked me to teach my fellow students. And so I asked my teacher. Obviously, you ask your teacher before you do anything. And so I asked him, may I teach? And he said, yes, you teach. And so I started teaching at 15 in my college and school, and then in fact, university later on. Yeah. Gary.
I met my first teacher in this life of yoga when I was 18. And a year later, I was in Madras, which is now Chennai, and I met Krishnamacharya and his son Deshikacharya and began a lifelong study with them. So I was 19, and when I was 21 in Madras, Deshikacharya said, you should teach and let's begin. And there were some Europeans visiting and he had me teach them. And that was my beginning. I was about 21.
Incredible. And Aadil, what part of the world were you in?
I was in Bombay, India.
Bombay, India. Yeah. Definitely different accent than mine from Brooklyn, but it's refreshing though. So you know what? One of the things, speaking of Brooklyn, so I'm the host of this podcast, but I'm also the founder of this platform community we're building called Wisdom Feed Plus, and one of our tagline, so to speak, is taking ancient ideas down to street level. You know, how do you make this practical for the everyday user, kind of the everyday person? So we know you've been doing this all your life, and it's well more than 40 years. But you know, I'd like to know what are some of the practical benefits to this. Then we can get more into some more nuance. But you know,
well, I'll take a stab. You know, the human being is, I use the phrase multidimensional. You know, we have, and most of us as we grow experience some back problems, neck tension, sleep issues, digestive distress, emotional suffering, anxiety, sadness, if not depression, and confusion about our future and lack of clarity about meaning and purpose in life. And that's true for everybody on the street and, you know, in the monastery. And this is an ancient science of exploring oneself at all of these levels and finding simple, pragmatic tools that you can apply to improve yourself in each of these levels, to fix back pain, to sleep better, to balance emotions, to gain clarity about your future. And so the whole science of yoga is really designed for human beings at a street level to manage their own condition and optimize their potential.
I agree with you, Gary, because I think of us as a whole, but yet to understand each other and to understand ourselves, we divide things. So I think of ourselves as being a physical body, a mental body, an emotional body, a spiritual body, even though they are all indisolubly interlinked. Mm-hmm. But to understand them and perhaps to address each one we have tools in yoga. So if you have a physical issue, we have asana. If you have a mental issue, we have pranayama. If you have emotional issues, we can combine the two. Then there is Ayurveda, which in Purna Yoga we incorporate. So you use diet. We use meditation, which is taught by Savitri, so that we can also attune the mind to the spirit. So all these are different tools we use depending upon the situation.
And do you have to, how do I put it? Do you have to go to an ashram and do yoga for 5 years before you get it? Or can someone who's new to it just kind of start getting benefits relatively quickly? Like, I know to play guitar, you have to get calluses before you can actually make some clean chords. So and also anyone who's watching it, we have a bunch of different streams. Please put in the comments where you are watching from, what part of the world you are, and welcome everyone. And feel free, if you have any questions, to drop them in the comments. We'll see them here. We'll pull them up on the screen. So thanks.
Well, I would say, Stephen, that anybody or everybody has the potential to have a transformational experience in one session, in one practice. Of course, as you mature in practice, your understanding of it deepens, you're able to make better choices, and you're able to get progressively more benefit from even less time spent. But, I can work with somebody who has a back problem and then they can experience relief within one session. Or someone who's not sleeping well, and give them a simple breathing technique, and they can even have impact in the first time they experience yoga. So you can't become master of yoga in one session. What's that thing you mentioned, guitar, like there's 10,000 hours it takes to become an expert of practice. But I think the potential is there for any individual to experience transformation, even from one practice.
I agree with Gary, obviously, but I often get telephone calls saying that I would like to become a yoga teacher. How long will it take?
Yeah.
And my main answer is, how long do you plan to live? Because it's a process.
That's great.
Yeah. So definitely you can get benefit immediately. Of course. I mean, I have people who come in and walk out without pain, but that's not yoga. That's it's more allopathy. It's putting a band-aid on it, because they have to go deeper inside eventually to find the cause of it. But again, the relief is wonderful and it is necessary. Yeah.
It inspires people to continue, actually. And that's, in fact, when we train yoga therapists, I would say that this is yoga chikitsa is the tradition of yoga therapy, that when we train therapists, one of the things we teach them is try to give your client an experience, even if it's not the real reason, the big main reason they came, that you can succeed in the first session in making a change, because that inspires them, encourages them to have faith in themselves, their own potential to heal through their own action, and of course, in you as a teacher or therapist, and in the process itself.
Interesting. Yeah, so we have people watching now from Redmond, from Guadalajara, from Woodinville. I actually lived in Woodinville for 6 months, but from Helsinki. So welcome everyone. Welcome everyone. We are talking with these two masters, and so I think one of the things that Gary mentioned earlier is to get into the breadth and depth of what yoga can do, as compared to, it's not just a workout. I think that's what I understood, that there's more to it. There's a whole kind of 360-degree approach. And I found it very interesting, Aadil, what you said earlier, that there are different tools. There's tools, part of it, for the body, for the mind, so I think that's pretty interesting as well.
I think what's, yoga, like when I began yoga was 1973, and it was not well known, and in the Western world, of course. And now it's worldwide. It's every town everywhere has yoga classes, probably even yoga training programs. But most of what the worldwide spread of yoga has been asana practice, which is a great system. I don't want to limit it to physical culture, but it's really focused fundamentally around the human structure, functional anatomy. And that's mostly what the Western world has heard about and understands yoga to be. But actually, it's more important than our functional anatomy for our own longevity, health, and well-being is our physiology. And there's tremendous tools in yoga practice that are designed to help us optimize our physiological functioning or cope with symptoms of suffering from physiological challenges. And even more important, in fact, I was taught that the proper field of yoga is mental health. So there are tools, like Aadil mentioned, meditation. We talk a lot about different styles of meditation for different purposes, and also chanting, and then specialized, more hidden secret practices that help you sort of find the meaning and purpose, deepen your own self-understanding, and connect the true sources of inspiration and nourishment. So there's so much of this tradition that has not become widespread and known in the yoga public.
Yeah, actually it reminds me of a quote about religion. And if you replace religion by yoga, it comes pretty close to what I want to say. It says, "But mark me well, religion is my name. An angel once, but now a fury grown. Too often talked about, too little known." And that last line, "too often talked about, too little known," is exactly what yoga has become nowadays. As Gary said, most of us just think of yoga as being asana. So it's talked about a lot. Everyone is talking about yoga. But to know its essence requires true dedication, study, and like any other great art or science, devotion, sincerity, humility. And these are the qualities that help us build towards the magnificence of yoga.
Where is that quote from? That beautiful quote that you just read?
I just remember it from childhood, but I can look it up and let you know later. Yeah, certainly.
And what was the last line of that again? It was beautiful.
Too often talked about, too little known.
Love it. Very cool. So when you talk about the essence of yoga, what are some of the things? I mean, we're getting into it, and I'm, so people are doing everything on Peloton now, so, and there is community, there is some Sangha there, which I think is part of what draws people to it. But, I think you're talking about other layers of not only devotion, but immersion, on not just the physical part of it. So, what are some of the other differences, what you guys are calling the essence of yoga?
Well, I think the root of yoga is fundamentally about awareness and about being able to understand the difference between our true nature, which is defined in the tradition as pure awareness, and our identification with our narrative about ourselves, others, and the world around us. Those narratives are actually a source of suffering, and they interfere with our ability to actually see what's truly going on all around us. So all of yoga, all methods of yoga are fundamentally about deepening self-awareness and then awareness of what's going on around us and becoming freed from our conditioned mind. And that translates even into anatomy. A lot of the suffering people experience in their structure is because of dysfunctional movement patterns. And in physical therapy, they talk about neuromuscular re-education in a very real way. These are dysfunctional anatomical or neurological movement patterns, samskaras. So yoga is really important is to begin to understand your patterns, your conditioning at the level of your body, at the level of your physiology, at the level of your emotions, and at the level of your sort of concept about yourself and others, and to free oneself from those patterns so that you can really see who you truly are and what's true for you and in relationship to your community and to the greater world around you. So I don't know of other traditions that are quite as focused on this science of surfacing and transforming dysfunctional patterns and becoming rooted in our true nature as pure awareness. That's sort of the essence of yoga, the way I see it anyway.
Yeah, Gary, and actually the true essence concept can be broadened or actually condensed into light and love. If you think of the essence of that which we are, it is a being of light, because its roots come from something called the Veda. The Veda are the oldest extant scriptures of the human race. Excuse me. And in these scriptures, they talk about the fact that we are actually so much more deep, so much more profound, so much more than we perceive ourselves to be or allow ourselves to be, because we have forgotten who we are or whom we are. And from the Veda comes one of the greatest mantra of all time, and that is the Gayatri mantra. Om Bhurbhuva Sva Tat Savitur Varenam. And the mantra requests the divine to, as a form of light, prakasha as light, to flow into all of humanity. And this understanding and eventually understanding and realization that we are actually beings of light, that our process is the uncovering of all that restricts us from seeing who we are or whom we are, is part of that joy of yoga. And that's what we teach. In essence, yoga is about going deep enough, getting rid of the samskaras, the patterns, getting rid of the vasanas, the deeper patterns which create huge obstacles for us because we repeat them again and again and again. So these programs that we are playing in our mind and these habits that we have formed in our lives cause us to forget who we are. And yoga helps us unravel that mystery and find the joy in our own self-discovery.
Well said, sir.
Wow, that was beautiful. That was gorgeous. I'm glad we're recording this. I want to listen to that again. So interesting. And so it's a continuation of something Gary touched on, but all this stuff was so fringe, not so long ago, like if I were talking about chakras to my friends in Brooklyn, I would say energy centers, or rather than your beautiful eloquence saying in touch with in touch with the universe, and that was gorgeous. But I would tell my friends in Brooklyn, that's like getting in the zone. Like they understand what getting in the zone is. So in the last 20 years, like Gary said, every town has a yoga. I mean, I remember 20 years ago, a yoga studio was, only in the crunchy places. Now it's everywhere. So, and it's good. It's all good but I think part of it is the world is increasingly stressful and people are increasingly looking for a way to manage that, to process it, and I can't quote you, but to let go of the shadow of what's in the way of, being infinite. Was infinite one of the words you used? I don't know, but it was beautifully said.
When I was a young man, I was a student, and Aadil mentioned the word religion. I was a student of religion and also in academics. I'm ABD, which kind of means all but dissertation. And what I saw as a student of world religions is that what yoga offers is a path to actualize the promise of any religion. And yoga is uniquely non-sectarian. That's one of the greatnesses of Patanjali's teachings about yoga. It's uniquely non-sectarian, but it was adopted by all kinds of sectarian faiths in India, different schools of Hinduism and Buddhism, and even Christianity. There are Christians in India, for hundreds of years that actually date back to the first, not hundreds of years, thousands of years. Thomas was martyred, the disciple of Jesus. Thomas was martyred in Madras, died there. And so there's Christianity that's adopted yoga in India for thousands of years also. So yoga is recognized within that culture, of course, as a path that's adopted by many different religions to help an individual cope with the challenges that life presents them, optimize their, as I said earlier, their potential, find a meaning and purpose, find happiness in the present moment, and that meaning and purpose and happiness in the face of the reality of change, impermanence, and ultimately even the reality of death. So these teachings are ancient, but yet they're completely accessible for anyone who has the good fortune of encountering them. And the fact that it spread quickly is a test, even the most, I would say, respectfully, the most superficial, and I don't mean superficial as silly, like this, the anatomy is more superficial to the physiology in that sense. So it's the most superficial parts of yoga that has gained such widespread popularity that if the rest of the community that has appreciated that went deeper, they discover a much vaster gift and potential that yoga has to offer the whole world, especially in this time of ongoing crises. We had pandemic, we have wars, and this will help as a tool people become stable and clear and gain more compassion for each other in the face of all of these challenges that we're experiencing as a collective in this modern time. What else can I say about it?
And I think I see it now is that, it used to be a 24-hour news cycle. Now it's a 24-second news cycle. It just changes, and, it's in real time, and the cameras people have with their iPhones are better than, broadcast cameras just a few years ago. So I feel that, and that's part of what, we created Wisdom Feed Plus, our community, because we're finding that it's pervasive. It's like never ending. And we're addicted to our phones, whether we want to be or not, depending on how well we manage it. But I think that yoga represents an opportunity to reset or take a breath or kind of recharge. And, how do you say those things in yoga terms?
Actually, that whole concept of high tech versus high touch, where we've lost connection with ourselves, starting with our bodies, right? Most people think of themselves as being a head rather than a whole body. So the first step is just realizing that you are a body, that this body is a vehicle. And as you say, this is slightly off topic, off topic compared to what you asked, but I want to help you understand that there are two ways of seeing yoga. One is the immediate need, that which I need for my body, that which I need for my mind. I have this emotional problem. Can you help? And then there is the bigger picture, the 40,000 foot view, where we are seeing humanity as a race evolve, which is the yoga of Sri Aurobindo, where he talked about the evolution of consciousness itself, that we as human beings with our choices can choose to move humanity towards a higher consciousness. So there are these two major ways in which we see yoga. And most of us are so stuck in our little stuff that we don't see the bigger picture. In fact, wisdom feed is a wonderful phrase because Patanjali, one of the codifiers of yoga 2,500 years ago, said that there are obstacles on the path to this realization. And the first one is avidya, which is ignorance. And that's what we are steeped in. We know so much that we actually are no longer wise. We have so much information that we don't have wisdom. And that's what has happened in our world. We are just bombarded with facts and figures. We are bombarded with information and we forget who we are.
Yeah.
And yoga brings us back into that necessary reminder.
Beautiful. I will connect what you just said, Aadil, with what Steve originally asked, which is, what can help us break that momentum of our personality, our narrative, of our self-interested, self-concern, self-fixation that creates separation, actually. And I think the simplest doorway into transformation is becoming conscious of the flow of the breath. The breath is a unique physiological system that's controlled by the autonomic nervous system. You've been breathing since the moment you were born, and you will breathe until your last breath at the moment you die. But with yoga, you can interrupt that unconscious pattern and thereby sort of link your conscious awareness and change your breath pattern. And that process in and of itself is a way of interrupting all kinds of patterns in movement. When you link your movement to conscious breathing, you can interrupt the dysfunctional movement patterns in your behavior, in your emotional reactivity. So I would say that one of the great doorways accessible to everyone is to become conscious of your breath. And breathing consciously can interrupt that momentum of unconscious action that we're all caught up in.
Beautiful, absolutely.
That makes a lot of sense. And as long as we're counting years, so if you guys have been doing yoga for 250 years between the two of you, and I'm just exaggerating, a long time, but
many lifetimes, let's say.
There you go. So I started doing these recordings really when I finished after college, 20 years old, like 40 something years ago. So and something that Aadil said really rang true, and that's part of the whole wisdom feed. While we're doing this wisdom feed, there's such a barrage of, and now you can't even tell what fake news is or real news, or, so that's why it's my streets. The name of this podcast is the Street Smart Wisdom Podcast. So it's like, what's practical, what's tactical? But I think you hit on something that was beautiful, that there's so much information. So that's part of what, my core business is, Better Listen. I've been publishing self-help audio books, audio programs for many, many years. And the first one that I did with Robert Bly many years ago, I edited on reel-to-reel tape with a razor blade. So that's,
the world has changed.
What the world has totally changed. Now AI will do a lot of that to a certain extent. But I mention that's part of the reason, Dharma, part of my calling is I kind of have, I don't know if it's an Ayurvedic term or Indian or a Sanskrit term. I have a BS detector. I kind of have a sense for, who's authentic, for, what's real. And honestly, I'll prove my ignorance. Gary said that he's doing this upcoming program with Aadil, upcoming course, and let's do a podcast. Let's do some things to kind of get the word out. And just the fact that I know who Gary is, so I trusted his choice. So I think what I'm trying to say is that with such a bombardment of information these days, I feel that, it's been my life's work to kind of weed out these things, what's real, what's trending, and, what's trending and not necessarily trendy, because some things that are trending have like yoga, you could say is trending, but it's not trendy because it's been around for thousands of years. So that's part of my calling to doing this and Wisdom Feed and Better Listen, is to kind of be a curator for tons of stuff that's out there.
It's a great service to the community. And it used to be that maybe university degrees would point to something, but it's all changing now. And I think what's really important as individuals, like individual students, individual seekers, it would be helpful for individual seekers to have a sort of a way of assessing for themselves the validity of teachings that are being offered, because as there's so many false trails out there, and superficial things, and then there's some real deep paths. The tradition would say that if you're brought to a deep path, it's because you've been in that path in the past, for lifetimes in the past. And that's why you're brought to that path. For example, I was in Krishnamacharya's house when I was 19, and I grew up not in Brooklyn, but in Philadelphia, which is another version of Brooklyn, I can say that, right? And at 19 years old, I'm in Krishnamacharya's house, and I felt like I was home. So, why is that? Well, we don't really know. But what I think practically is when you meet a teaching or a teacher who's transmitting a teaching, and it's not all about them, but it's really actually all about you as a student, and that through the interaction with that teacher, you feel seen, and that you can begin to access yourself at a more multidimensional level. And it's not about achieving some external goals. It's about feeling better about yourself, becoming more grounded and stable. I think it might have been that one of the great yogis who came to the West, who's long gone now, Swami Satchitananda. He was always good at making like little etymological jokes. But I think one of the things he said, and he's not the only one who said this, of course, that the hardest asana is standing on your own 2 feet. And I think that one of the goals of a good teacher, or for a student to look, when the teacher is trying to help you understand how to stand on your own 2 feet and become independent and clear in your own life, and not about joining their club, and becoming a disciple or something. I think that's really important. How to help students connect to authentic traditions. And authentic tradition will help you deepen your own self-understanding and give you more independence, even in the process of transformation. And I'll just say one more thing. Having said that, that doesn't mean you can just make things up. I mean, some individuals can. There's no doubt that there are individuals who have, because of maybe their past lives or the mystery, really tap in directly to authentic tradition. But for the most part, it's good to seek out traditions that have been passed on for generations. Receive a transmission, receive an initiation. And then when you make your own link to that wisdom, what we call the yoga vidya is a living body of knowledge. And through initiation, you can have your own direct link to that great vidya, wisdom. Vidya means wisdom. Your wisdom feed, the Sanskrit word would be vidya. And the tradition says that once you're initiated, and some without initiation, you can have your own direct link to that wisdom feed, that comes through the tradition. And that's, I think, really important for students to know, that they can have direct access. They don't need, once they're initiated into the process, they don't need dependency on teachers who are charging them lots of money or making them jump through hoops.
Actually, Gary, I would like to add something to that. Steve, what Gary said just now is extremely potent, because I am seeing this pervasively on Instagram and on other platforms of social media, where somebody is inventing yoga poses. The poses are not contortionism. The stuff that people are presenting is contortionism. It's like being an acrobat. That is not yoga. The asana, the physical practice of yoga itself, is not fully yoga, but the performance and trying to contort oneself is actually just pure ego. And ego is one of the obstacles on the path of yoga. So if you look at a traditional asana, a traditional yoga pose, there is a flow of energy. There is a stimulation in the channels in your body, which we call nadis. There is a movement towards a bigger purpose. That is part of the whole practice. And when Gary said, you can't just make up stuff, he is on the button. I've done so many Instagram reels on this concept of please don't make up stuff. There is a tradition. And then on the other side, Gary said something also very potent, which is you can eventually connect with the source itself. Now, my wife Savitri is one of the greatest meditation teachers I think I have ever met. And yet she has not read texts and texts and texts. She connected with the source, with her own intense tapasya. Tapasya is the ardent practice where she would meditate 20, 22 hours a day and then get the revelation that comes through her. Then it comes from the source. So it's not only education that gives us yoga, though education can be one of the primary channels for bringing lineage into your body. That's another concept that I think is crucial, lineage, where you connect with something that is bigger than yourself. I think it was Isaac Newton who said that. If I have seen further, I have seen further because I have stood on the shoulders of giants. It's that whole concept that there is a tradition. My tradition in the asana world is B.K.S. Iyengar. My tradition in the spiritual world is Savitri and Sri Aurobindo. So the tradition brings you up, it uplifts you. And that is why it is important to be humble so that we can have tradition. If you've read the Gita, one of the greatest scriptures ever written, Krishna tells Arjuna that the first step on the path of yoga towards self-realization is humility. Humility, the first step.
Beautiful. You know, I want to make sure that you hear this, and actually thank you, Nicola. I see there's a comment. So one of the things that I was taught is one of the purposes of yoga is to uncover your own svadharma. So let me take a moment. Dharma is a Sanskrit term that refers to the cosmic whole, the order of the whole. You know, in the West, we use the Chinese term Tao, the way things are. In Sanskrit, it's Ritam, R-T-A-M, which is actually interestingly cognate to the English words art, harmony, and order. So Ritam is the cosmic order. And Dharma is living in alignment with that cosmic order. But within that, each one of us have our own unique way of doing that. That's your own svadharma. So our goal, I was taught in my 20s of yoga, is to help me align, understand Dharma, and uncover and align with my own svadharma. So Nicola's question was, is everybody meant to evolve in that way? And the answer from what I was taught is everybody has their own unique svadharma. and where they are in their own growth and evolution. So in this individual lifetime, this is a metaphysical concept, of course, from the tradition, your Svadharma may not be to go all the way to full liberation, kaivalya, enlightenment, if you want to use a popular Western term. Your Svadharma may be serving your community. You might be a social activist. Some people in the modern world have turned yoga into social activism, but traditionally it wasn't. In fact, they were renunciates. And they impacted the whole world, not by going out there and actively working for change, but by going deep inward and by their own vibration affected change. So if you want to be an activist, that's your Svadharma. If you want to be an asana teacher and you feel from your heart, that's your Svadharma. So no, I mean, I think that ultimately we all have the potential to have full awakening, but each individual has to find their own path and be aligned with what's true for them. Don't try to copy other people. Don't imitate. In fact, one of my teachers, when he was a young man, his father, Krishnamacharya, J. Krishnamurti, the famous world teacher, came to Krishnamacharya, and Krishnamacharya sent him to his son Deskachar. And Deskachar told me that Krishnamurti told him, don't be another monkey. Don't copy other people. Find out what's so for you. So Aadil and I are, I feel like me and Aadil are Dharma brothers, the kindred spirits about yoga. But the reality is, although this is the depth of the tradition, everybody has their own path. And if your orientation is asana, that's beautiful. If you open yourself, you'll see there's much more to yoga than that. But wherever you find yourself aligned with your own Svadharma, your heart is at rest, you have clarity, and you feel comfortable, that's a good start. And don't worry, don't try to pretend and copy someone else.
Got it. Wow. Just real quick, a couple of housekeeping details. Gary and Aadil, they have a course. I think it's a 2-part course starting called The Essence of Yoga. It starts on Sunday, and we put a link in the in the chat. So feel free to check that out. And also, this is brought to you by Wisdom Feed. So I'm going to drop a link in the chat if you want to find out more about our Wisdom Feed offering. And one of the things that I'm finding in all of this, and when Aadil said that people are inventing their own yoga poses, it's like it's a TikTok challenge. Let's see what will ever get the most, what will get the most views. And I get that, because that's the new currency. But one of the things I'm finding, as I said earlier, I've been doing this for a long time, and I'm finding so Better Listen is our audio label. Wisdom Feed, is kind of our community we're building. And so we're trying to be a launch pad for new voices that are coming up, because everyone's getting old. And so part of that is, when you said the word lineage, a lot of people don't understand the lineage who came before them. And I think that, and I knew intuitively that, maybe it's a good thing. Maybe they're just creating something new because, out of nowhere. But I think there's a certain, the tradition, there's a certain, I think the 40,000 foot view that there's something bigger than your personal, that you're connected to something that's been going on before you were born. And, hopefully, the world still exists and all this stuff. And after you're gone. So I thought that the lineage was an important word. And if you have anything to say about that, or about the upcoming course that you want to talk about, feel free to chime in about that.
Well, I just want to add one thing. There's this beautiful Sanskrit word, which is aparusheya. And aparusheya means no human author. So these deep teachings, the tradition says that they were not figured out and invented by individual practitioners, but they were received. Like Aadil talked about Savitri, from the depth of her own meditation, from her own silence. What the tradition says is the teachings reveal themselves to the prophets, to what are called the rishis. In the Western Abrahamic traditions of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, we have the notion of a prophet. In Vedic tradition, they use the word a rishi. And so the implication is that these teachings weren't just figured out by human beings, but they were received from the causal plane, a higher source. So although we can tap into that as individuals, most of us don't have enough inner stillness to be able to tap into it. In a lineage, the original, let's say, fountain or root of the lineage received these teachings, and then they passed them on generationally from teacher to student. That's called parampara. And that flow of knowledge, which is called sampradaya, once you're initiated into it, you can tap into it. Kind of like if you think about to log into your browser, your web browser, you have to have a password. So you have a password. I'm going to make a joke. Your password is like your mantra, and you can tap into the Google God and find, oh, Google God, give me the information about this, that, and the other thing. You can tap with your mantra. So to turn this into sort of simple street language, initiation is like signing up for your internet service provider and receiving your secret mantra that enables you to access this divine knowledge. That's very different than just making it up. So just know that in world religious traditions, all of them, there's this notion of having received, not figuring it out, but receiving these deep teachings. And I think that's the meaning of one of the important meanings of lineage, that it's being received and then passed on generationally. And that's the knowledge that has tremendous timeless value.
Yeah. I mean, all true, all true, and all, bigger than our personal existence. But it's also the dichotomy. It helps you empower who you are, living authentically, because you quiet stuff down so you can kind of see who you are underneath all the noise. But at the same time, it's connected to something much bigger than just your day-to-day life. And I think that's where the lineage and the tradition, makes it, the sum is greater than the parts kind of thing.
Steve, in the book Savitri, Sri Aurobindo writes, time he has none to turn his gaze within. Time he has none to turn his gaze within. We have become so distracted by the world that we do not even consider our own true potential. And the deeper practice of yoga is the exploration, the discovery, and the application or the fulfillment of our own potential. So yoga is not about running away from the world and living in a cave. Yoga is not about the renunciation. They say neti, neti, it is not this. But the Aurobindonian yoga is realizing that the manifestation, the world itself, is the divine. The divine did not leave, the divine became the universe. And in that process, we have to develop a respect for everything around us, a humility at witnessing this amazing creation. And part of that is what just now Gary talked about, the stillness. In fact, in Savitri, he writes, silence, the mystic birthplace of the soul. It's beautiful. Yeah. Silence, the mystic birthplace of the soul. And we don't have enough silence. We are bombarded all the time, and choosing to pull away from distractions, to put our phones aside, to stop listening to television, to take time just to go within. Time he has none to turn his gaze within. And he wrote that in the 40s.
In the 40s.
Yeah, exactly. 80 years later, it's even worse. Yeah.
Wow, time he has none. Time he, she has none, or they. Yeah, but it's true. I mean, who? Wow, that was just brilliant. That was brilliant. So, as we, couple of things. I could keep doing this for for hours, but I have another one in an hour, so I need to prepare for that. So let's talk about, if you want to talk about what you're going to do in the course, and then maybe we could finish with a short meditation or something like that.
I mean, what we'll do is just share the depth and breadth of these teachings. So we'll have conversations of asana in the context of pranayama, and asana and pranayama in the context of meditation, and asana and pranayama and meditation in the context of, forgive this word, prayer. The way I was taught, asana prepares the breath for pranayama, pranayama prepares the mind for meditation, and meditation prepares the heart for prayer. And together it's an integrated science. So I think and I'll say it, and I'll hear what Aadil says, but I think what our intention is, and mine certainly, is to share what a truly integrated practice looks like that works multidimensionally using all of these tools, rather than discrete, distinct practices that have maybe some anatomical or even physiological value, but that these tools working together work the whole being.
Absolutely, Gary. And that's why the word essence that you see on your screen, it's about the essence of yoga. And of course, the application. How do we get there? And that's what we are going to do. It's not been done before with two different traditions, but Gary and I are so beautifully synchronized with our dharma pointing towards the same goal that I believe this will be a tremendous value to you on your path towards your own fulfillment. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. That's so we're going to do first of all, this has been enjoyable, enlightening, taking a lot of notes, a lot of good things. And so Aadil, were you saying you wanted to lead a meditation, or?
Sure. This is a meditation taught by Savitri in her system called Heartful Meditation. And the process is talked about in the sutra as being pratyahara, which is the withdrawal of the senses, right? Because everything that comes into our mind comes through our senses. And so when we can control our senses, we control our mind. So this is a simple technique called mental centering. Mental centering. This comes straight out of Savitri, and it's used by tens of thousands of students all over the world. Whenever you want to begin meditation, whenever you want to focus your mind, whenever you feel distracted. So let's begin. With your right hand, middle fingertip, touch your heart center, which is at the level of your frontal armpits. And then introduce the slow, deep breath. If you know Ujjayi breathing, then do that. Gently release your hand. Then place both hands a couple of inches away from your ears, with your hands slightly cupped, fingertips facing the ceiling, not backwards, and all fingers together. And feel the emanations of your brain, the electroencephalic waves that come out of your brain. Think of your senses, the sense of listening, sight, taste, touch, smell, but primarily listening and sight. Inhale. And then exhaling, slowly bring your hands together, and as you do, withdraw your senses from the outer world into the center of your head. With your palms together, inhale. And then exhaling, slowly move your palms down, imagining those senses moving down the center of your body, the Sushumna, to your heart center. Inhaling, lift again. Exhaling, feel your senses withdrawing from the outer world as you bring your hands together. Exhaling as you do this. Bring your hands into Namaste on the inhalation. Exhaling, feel your senses moving down. I look within. I listen within. And for the third time, inhaling, lift. Exhaling, gather your senses from hither and yon back into the center of your body. Inhale. Exhaling down the center of your body into that warm light inside your heart center. And then inhaling slowly, release your hands. Open your eyes with a gentle smile. You can do this for a few minutes. Savitri has often done it for hours and hours to really bring herself inside.
That was brilliant. That was
Stephen,
brilliant.
do we have 2 minutes that I can add something that takes this and just to follow up on that?
Of course, sure.
So thank you, Aadil.
You're welcome.
So this will be more internal than the less of the movement, but in the same vein. So please, and it will take 1 minute or maybe 2. Please close your eyes once again. And now I'd like you to focus on the light coming in through your eyelids. And visualize almost that your eyes are oblong, and trace that light that's coming in through your eyelids deep into the center of your head. And as you're doing this, tracing the light from your eyes deep into the center of your head, hear the sound of my words, which come in through your ears, and those sounds are magically digested and converted into meaning. That's a different discussion. But just hear the sound coming in through your ears and trace your ears deep into the center of your head, to the place where the light from your eyes and the sound through your ears converge deep in the center of your head. And as you're doing that, notice the breath coming in and out through the tip of your nose. And trace the air from your nose deep into the center of your head, to the place where the air meets the sound meets the light. Find that space deep in the center of your head where the light from your eyes, the sound from your ears, and the air through your nose converge. And feel like space is opening up. It's a visualization deep in the center of your head. Open that space deep in the center of your head. And if you look at the top of that space, feel like it opens through your crown. It's like a portal to the causal plane. If you're distracted, come back to that space deep in the center of your head. Feel it expanding, and now look down at the bottom of that space and you see an opening, which you can trace, as Aadil said, the Shoshana, all the way down to the root, from the crown through that space deep in the center of your head to your root. And just for a moment, allow your attention to travel down to the center of that channel at the region of your heart. And feel that connection from above the crown through that central channel to your heart. Receiving from above, and then continue down to your root, grounding to the earth. This is the core of your being. In the heart, the ancients called it the Hridaya Guha, the cave of the heart. And that central channel is your portal from this world to the world of the spirit, all the way back to source. So just hold your attention there for a moment. And when you emerge, imagine as you're opening your eyes that you're gazing at your world from that infinite core within you.
Thank you, Gary.
That was beautiful. That was great. Yeah, so thanks everyone for showing up. Gary, Aadil, thank you so much for your individual wisdom, your collective wisdom, and that class, I think, starts Sunday. That looks like that'll be great. There's a link in the comments. If you want more information about Wisdom Feed, you could find that there as well. And Nicola says thank you. Jean says hello from Boston. Any last words? And then I think we're done.
I just want to thank you, Stephen, for your Dharma, your Svadharma with Wisdom Feed. It's a beautiful and needed service you're providing. Thank you.
Indeed. Thank you very much.
Now that was a treat. Okay, everyone. So we'll see you all next time. Take it easy. Thanks for showing up.
Bye.
Bye-bye.